Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our webinar, in which we'll share more about how we connect 10x your application development with Rappit. I'm here together with my colleague Vinod Kumar, who's the head of product. I myself am the head of product marketing, business development, and today we'll share a bit of what Rappit is about. Then we do a technical deep dive, a demo. We'll close with a Q&A and as well as how to get involved. So a quick introduction on Rappit. Rappit is our application development accelerator that we launched at Future Vibe and Google Cloud Next in Antwerp recently. Formally, we refer to this as EVA, and basically with the Rappit release, it's now generally available for both consultants and developers to start developing advanced business applications on Java, optimized for Google Cloud. I'm also glad to announce that we have two launching customers, Color Concepts, who will basically be using Rappit to prototype applications themselves, as well as a multinational manufacturer, which is basically using Rappit to develop applications. So there are two use cases for Rappit. One is using for generating prototypes. The other one is basically using it for their own development. So there are four phases to rapidly build your custom application. The first phase is requirements gathering, where Rappit provides your design studio to quickly gather your design and get a design. The second phase is the instant prototyping, where Rappit allows you to prototype screens instantly. So based on the first phase, on the requirements, you create instant screens with real data that allows you to play hand-on and actually get a feeling on how the application would look like. Then proceeding to the third stage, the actual application is generated, so the code is generated. And typically we see that up to 80% of lean code is generated in this step. And here comes, I think, one of the unique advantages of Rappit. In the fourth stage, the developer can add his or her own code to basically further enhance and develop the application. So with Rappit, developers have full flexibility to do that. They are not restricted or constrained to the Rappit tool, but they can take the code and further customize to the specific needs. And also, I would like to highlight that Rappit allows you to refine your requirements iteratively. So if you have added custom code, you can still go back to phase one or phase two to further improve prototypes and generate new code. That code will not be overwritten. So 10x without vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in is a very important element that you try to stay away from with Rappit. So with Rappit, you can develop applications 10 times faster, 10 times better, and 10 times cheaper. 10 times faster because it allows you in a tool to facilitate the better collaboration between business and IT. And based on the screens that are generated on the requirements, the business can provide feedback and it can be further fine-tuned. Faster because also we see that, and depending on the complexity of the application, that up to 80% of lean and clean code that can be very well maintained is generated. And also faster because with Rappit, CI/CD scripts and test scripts are basically also generated, so that also ensures a fast deployment. 10 times better, and because if you do that requirement and gathering and prototyping process right, you get a right solution in a much faster way, but also it incorporates the best practices that we have seen from hosting, security, and scaling by default in a generated application. And this basically allows with Rappit as a tool to do some of the heavy lifting to allow the developer to focus on differentiating activities, more on the customization side. 10 times cheaper. We also see that with Rappit, the generated applications really are much cheaper to run compared, for example, to the runtime license that local platforms generated applications have, or we've also seen examples where Rappit generated applications are much cheaper than the SaaS equivalent of an application. Also, it's optimized for reduced hosting charges, and we see that by making proper use of the developer's time, it's also much cheaper in the total cost of ownership. Rappit is cloud native, and with developers own their own source code, and basically they can run it everywhere, optimized for Google Cloud and Java technology. So what do we see as typical use cases? For example, legacy application modernization could be advanced Lotus Notes or performance or progress, but many other applications. Of course, cloud native application development, typically for line of business applications, for example, the CRM or quality, regulatory, ERP extensions. But also we've seen examples that with Rappit, you can basically replace SaaS-based solutions or low-code-based solutions where vendor limitations like lock-in or runtime license apply. And also very importantly, Rappit is wired for big data, so it's enabled for big data use cases. And there are some typical application characteristics. So we see that it's enterprise grade, facilitating up to thousands or 10,000 of users in an easy way. Where typically users are mostly company employees or partners, and screens are registrative in nature, and so typically quite some data entry with an extensive data model and complete data access, as well as medium complex logic or advanced workflows, where Rappit also allows for integrations to master data from external systems, and basically generate application can by default also used both for web and mobile. I think we would like to highlight here that Rappit is not a low-code platform, it's really complementing that, where you see that there are some very nice tools available for citizen developers, but Rappit is really coming into play where the constraints of those kind of tools are biting, where you have complex applications with or more advanced applications where there's a lot of customizations or logic to be added, which is typically done by developers. That's where Rappit can provide you with a kickstart, and where the alternative would basically be to develop from hand. And with Rappit, you now have a faster way to develop. I already referred to our launching customers. So we've been working with a manufacturing multinational, which is enabling their developers to produce line of business applications. And for example, they had a use case where they had an advanced application which was not suitable to build with low code or no code. Based on 8 hours of training of Rappit, they were able to develop this application in 20 days, where the alternative would have been to develop it from scratch, basically in coding, and that would have taken them 100 days. So much faster development time, and also 8% of the code was generated with Rappit, and this code was optimized for performance, of course. On the other side, we've got Concepts, who's basically in the business to provide digital services like a B2B platform to the printing industry, and they had a 10-year-old application that needed to be rebuilt and also be further extended. So with Rappit, we've been able to speed up their in-house development, where they do the design and prototyping, and then Vaneberg, based on this design and prototyping, completes development. So we've been able to basically rebuild and extend this application in less than 10 months, with 60 to 70% of the code generated automatically. I think this is a rather brief recap on Rappit, but now let's move to Vinod, who will show some real-life demos on what we can do with Rappit. Vinod, over to you.
Thank you, Hubert. Hello, everyone. So let's look at the demo of Rappit. Like what Hubert was mentioning, one of the use cases of Rappit is to be able to extend your ERP systems. This is a use case that we see very frequently happening to many of our customers. One is that like they have their existing ERP systems. In this case, we have taken the work order management application, which is extending SAP. Customers, if they want to have new functionalities built, if they want to extend their existing ERP systems, it's much more expensive and very time consuming. So for that, what frequently happens is that in the customer scenario, they want to build the new features as a separate application and integrate it with their existing systems. So it could be existing ERP like SAP or any other ERP systems or success factors or Salesforce, etc. So in this case, the demo that we are going to see is a work order management application where the work orders are getting created in SAP and get pushed with an API integration into the work order application. And then in the work order management application, there are a lot of features, including workflows, ability for internal and external technicians to access it on desktop, on mobiles. And once the workflow is completed, we push it back into the SAP systems. So this is the use case of extending your URP that we are going to see in the application, in the demo. So this is the demo of the generated app. This is a screen of a generated app, but let's look at that in the live demo itself. So this is the generated app. So if you look at it, there are work orders grouped based on the statuses. You have the menu where you can have the work orders, the products, dashboards, and a lot of different master data that can be managed. When you go to products, which is also a type of master data, then you have the list of products displayed, and then you have, for example, your dashboards where you can see the work order status, what is not assigned, 10 is not assigned, and 7 are complete, etc., and also tasks status. So you can see that. So this is based on a custom application that was needed, and we have built a custom application. So how was this custom application built is what we are going to see. But before that, the idea is not to see the detailed functionality of this application, but just to see different types of things that can be built rapidly on Rappit. So for example, if you go into a particular from the list page, if you go to a detail page, which you can have your information um, separated into different tabs. For example, you have basic details, customer and demography, task locations, and you can have different types of sections like a category, dates, order details, subcontractor. So you can have different sections and forms arranged logically into different tabs and sections. You go to customer demography, you can see the list of all the tasks that are there. And tasks, for example, each task can have its own details, and each task can also have one or more products that it has to service. So, and the task also has a workflow. For example, when it is in accepted state, you can do a complete. For example, when you say complete, you say the task has been did today, for example, and then the technician can mark it as complete. The status of the task gets marked as completed, and you see that the workflow button is gone because it's already completed and there's no more workflow actions. So you'll be able to follow your workflows from here. And also there are like task locations. Many of these things, all these things that earlier that we saw are all things that you can easily do in Rappit just by customization. But Google Map is not something that is available now as customization, as a directly Rappit feature. So you can do custom coding for which you can do, of course, in the UI or backend, and bring in any kind of features that is needed. So in this case, we have embedded a Google Map as a custom code into this application to extend more than what Rappit provides. So this is a very brief, very small application just to demonstrate what is possible in Rappit, and let's see how it was done. So this is a Rappit Studio. This is the generated application that we are seeing, and which is deployed also. And this is the Rappit Studio where the application development happens. In Rappit Studio, we'll be able to have different tenants, and each customer has their own tenant. So in this case, we build the application on Vandenberg demo tenant. So in Vandenberg demo tenant, you can have your own list of all the applications in your own organization. So the work order management is one of the applications in this demo tenant. So when you go into that demo application, in this case, the work order management application, you see the different menu items that are possible in the designer. Rappit is focused on two types of users, especially. One is a consultant. The consultants are users who are discussing with the key users and gathering the requirements or the business requirements and doing designs and prototyping. So that is the role of a consultant. So Rappit, one side, it supports a consultant. Another profile Rappit supports is the developers. The developers are the users who are basically enhancing the designs that has been captured and doing the code generation and further code changes and implementing the complete application. So for the requirements gathering phase, which is done by the developers, there are two major items. One is the gathering exercise, and then it's the design exercise. In gathering, we have the, for example, the project brief, where every project starts with a project brief with like what are the goals of the project, what are the stakeholders, what is the budget, what is the expectations in timelines, etc. Then you also have, during the requirements gathering phase, a lot of documentation generated, and also like a brainstorming diagrams, etc., that are needed. So those are also captured in Rappit. Rappit provides one place where all information is captured and stored, so that even at a later stage, if a new developer has to come in, then they directly go in here and then look at all the previous documentations that were generated. or we need to transfer this from one vendor to another vendor later, 2 years later, then you can do that because all the knowledge is captured in one place and easy to be transferred. This is one of the important points asked by big customers, like what is the reversibility of knowledge transfers. So this EVA provides you all those enterprise features that are needed. At the document level, so you can look at each of those documents and then you can create complete documentation of what is needed. Similarly, you can have your brainstorming diagrams done here. Like for example, you have designed the 2B system, 2B system where uh, the consultant is doing the brainstorming along with the key users and saying, okay, we have the SAP system, existing SAP system, and it is extended by a work order management app, which is running on Google in this case. And they also expanded the process diagram of the process, the work order coming into SAP, and from SAP it goes into the work order management app. The orders are coming in, it is in not assigned state, and each order has multiple tasks, and each task starts with a not assigned state, and the project manager can assign a technician, and the technician can accept or reject the task. And once they have accepted it, they make sure that they are working on the task and completing it and marking it as completed. Once all the tasks for that order are completed, then the task gets completed, and then it gets integrated back into the original SAP system saying the order is completed. So this is a application flow that is discussed during the requirements gathering phase and will be implemented. So that is in the documents place. During the discussions and brainstorming, the consultant identifies all the list of roles that are needed who will use the application, like for example, a system admin, a project manager, technician, leader, etc. And they each of these roles, what are the different activities that they have to do in the system? That is the user stories. So they can also capture user stories, like I need to log into the system using, in this case, Okta as my SSO, manage master data for admins, uh, view work orders by both admins and technical technicians, assign a technician, which is done by the PM. And you can also look at all the user stories needed in your app and also assign who can be the roles who will use it. Like for example, in this case, the project manager is the person who will do the assigning the technician. Or if you want to check other roles, you can easily check, for example, leader can also do that, and then immediately it gets added. So your user stories, like best practices, you can also do the prioritization of the user stories. You can categorize that based on the complexity, very low to very high. You can categorize by risks, and also you can assign the Moscow principles, like whether it's a must have requirement or should have requirement or could have or wish. So all those iterations you can do it. And finally, all these help in making you determine whether the requirement is in scope or out scope or yet to be discussed. Also, you can capture a lot more other details, like for example, the summary, the preconditions, basic flows, alternative flows, success criteria, etc., and also add attachments to each of the user stories. These user stories not necessarily have to be followed only from Rappit. You can also, if the organization strategy is to use Jira, then you can also export it from here and import that into Jira and then continue to use it from there. Why user stories is provided in Rappit is that often the consultants, when they are starting, even if Jira is the ticketing system in the organization, when new requirements are getting discussed, often it's not starting always with Jira, but in an Excel sheet or somewhere, the user stories, etc., getting captured. And Rappit provides you already a place where you can capture it in a very structured way with the best practices approach of how you do that, so that every consultant make sure that it is forcing all the consultants to gather the requirements in a very standard way and also following all the good practices that are there advised for requirements gathering. So similarly, you can say what are the different login methods supported, needed to be supported for the generated app. So for example, in this app, how people log in. So in this case, it is using Google login. You can also use SAML based, OpenID, other systems for your SSO. So once the requirement gathering phase is done, the consultants do the design. The design, for example, they can do the data model diagram. So we discussed that there is already a data model which was captured during the requirements gathering phase. So the consultant is capturing all the different tables that are required and mass data that is required. For example, for each of those tables, what are the different fields, etc. They capture that. So for example, if you look at work order, all the different fields that are needed are captured and stored here. So for example, if you look at site code, then there's a lookup, site name, it's a string, escalation level is a drop down. So you have a very comprehensive list of data types that are supported, like strings, numbers, drop down, lookup, date time, file attachments, a lot of different types of data types used in business applications. And also you can have a drop down where predefined values can also be set, like in this case escalation levels. There can be P1, P2, P3, P4, so you can set that. And also you can do a lot more features are there, we will see that later. For example, you can do conditional formatting. P1 has to be the font color, font background or font color should be red and background. For P2 levels, we want to highlight as yellow. For example, this is how the work order application is based on your configuration is displaying all your escalation levels in that color. So that's what you can also easily configure here. This can be done directly by the consultant themselves. And also you can also have like whether a field is mandatory or not, you can say yes, no, or even conditionally. And when you say conditionally, you can have a query builder or to typically say under which condition this field becomes mandatory. For example, if um, the um, work order status work order status is equal to some another field or a value, director value, then you will be able to say it like it is work order status is to be assigned, then this is mandatory. Or if it is to be work order status is assigned or completed, then this becomes mandatory. So like that, you'll be able to build a query and set the conditions also. And these things you can set it on many different levels. So this is a table that you define. Similarly, when you define what Rappit provides is automatically based on the tables that you've done and the lookups and other configurations that you have created, it automatically creates a data model diagram as well, so that you can easily visualize what is there. So for example, you have the work order table. You have the tasks table, multiple tasks below the for each work order. Then you can also have the for each task can have multiple products. So all these, the diagram itself is automatically generated by Rappit and shown to you. And also you can see all the references, like for example, products have root causes as references, or products have defect types which are pointing to defect codes, master data table, etc. So that is the visualization system tries to show automatically to make it much more easier to understand the data models for the consultants and the users. And this is where we also configure the workflow. So this is a workflow. For example, the task we wanted to have a workflow like what we saw here. For example, you click that. In every work order, there is a list of tasks, and each task has a status like assigned or completed or rejected, etc. And then based on the status of the task, in this case, the status of the task is assigned. So you can accept or reject. The technician basically can come and accept or reject a assigned task. So these things are configured. This workflow is configured here. So it shows you automatically all the different status of a particular or the particular task it can go through. And when it is not in assigned state, these are the actors who can act on it, like admins and PM, and the action that they can take is assign. So when they take an action, when they press the button assign, then the next status is automatically moves to the assigned state. And when it is an assigned state, it is admins and technical users who can accept or reject. So when they accept it, it goes into accepted state. So in the accepted state, then it's the technicians and admins who can take an action to complete. And when say complete, it moves to completed state, and completed state doesn't have any more steps. So all these things we can directly configure in the workflow editor. And then at each step, you can also specify, like for example, when assigning, if there is any mandatory fields to be set, then you can set that. If there is a comments are for this action, if comments are mandatory, you can specify that. If you have to send a mail and with mail details on whom it has to send to, everything you can configure that. So similarly, this each of those steps, that's how we configure. And when it is in, for example, assigned state, and when these roles of users are looking at the record, so when the particular technician role is opening it, we need to show the accept and reject buttons. So that is what all the two actions. And also, apart from those actions, what are the fields, disable all fields or show all fields, which actions to be enabled, which actions like accept reject to be enabled, or all such things can be configured by the consultant directly, and a workflow like this can be built easily by the consultant. So that is on the workflow. So once the workflow is also configured, then the consultant will want to start making the prototype so that he can show it to the key user, and the key users will be able to do the feedback on the further refining the uh, requirements of that application. So when you are doing the prototyping, the consultant can choose a template. There are a couple of templates available, and going forward, there will be more and more templates supported. So each of those things, if you look at it, there are a lot of properties, and then the properties can be changed like directly from here, or from a CSS file. They can change the properties to, like, for example, change the color here, etc. They will be able to change it quickly. Then there are the pages. Then when you get the pages, the system generates pages based on all the data models that we have created. System can automatically generate the page. So if we see here, we already generated several pages. For each of the tables, you can generate the list page. List page is like where you show the list of records. So whenever you show a list of records like this, that is known as a list page. When you show a detail of a record, then that is known as a detail page. So you can have the list page and detail page pages generated. Once it is generated, you can further go and make changes to that. So you can, for example, list page, it automatically generates the list of list page with like title bar, quick bar, table with all the fields that are needed to be shown. For example, here, when we go to the list page, it shows all these fields. So you can say configure which fields you want to show. So you can do that, and then let's say if you want to reorder what you show, the phone number has to be above, you can make the change and then quickly do that. At the table level also, you will see a lot of properties. It's basically an opinionated system for rapid business application development. So regularly the features that are needed on a list page, get all those properties come in very quickly, so that, for example, if the developer or the consultant wants to group something on a particular row, then they can group it on which column they want to. In this case, they have grouped it on status column. So that's why we see that it is grouped by status. This list of records is grouped by status. At the same time, when you look at the products, it's not grouped, it's just shown directly. So these are like two views. If the consultant wants, they can quickly just make the setting and then achieve such features. At every cell level also, you can say whether it has to be shown on mobile, or the label has to be shown, or how much width has to be taken, etc. You can configure. Similarly, this is a list page. When you go to a detail page, for example, let's say that there is a work order, then you go to a detail record. The details are organized into different tabs, and inside each tab there are different sections and fields. So if we want to organize it like that, then you go to a detail page, and then you can say what are the button grouping. For example, we want a back button, and we want save, cancel, and change log. So those things, if you see save, cancel, or it comes based on your configurations. And you have basic details tab. So you have 4 tabs, and that is what basic details, customer and demography tabs, task locations. That's what we see here. And within each tab, how it is configured, like we have different subsections, and each subsection has different fields. We can easily organize these things from there. And then you, for example, you can add directly form fields. It will show the list of all the fields. You just need to, consultant needs to just select which fields they want in which of those sections. Then those things automatically gets added. And the consultant will be able to generate and update the prototype and see it. So that's the idea. There will always be situations where just the features provided by the low code or no code tool or cannot be sufficient for doing the application. That's where we have the custom components. The custom components are UI components which you can build and then use it in many different parts of the application. So you can extend your code you can build your custom components directly from here, or you can build your code, you can extend your code from your Eclipse or VS or any other IDEs that you normally use for the backend and also for the front end. So this is one example of a front end component created. For example, there's a comments component needed in this application in many places. So the developer, in this case, the consultant is asking a developer to come and build a feature which is not directly available out of box from Rappit. So you can build it and incorporate that into any of your existing pages that you created. So in this case, for example, you create a component, and then this is also is something that you can directly edit directly on the browser and see the results. For example, Tom Cruise, then you can see the results. Similarly, your CSS, you can change your CSS, you can change your HTML, you can change your TypeScripts, and make Rappit quickly your custom components and embed that into other places. Similarly, the consultant will also be able to do translations to multiple languages. For example, in this application, it's already built as an English application and translated to German and Dutch. But let's say that consultant wants to also enable for another language, then they have to just use, for example, they select Japanese in this case. If they want Japanese also to be shown, they select Japanese, and then they can click generate the translations. Then it will automatically have the Japanese translations also created. So in this case, it is using Google Translate and creating all the Japanese translations for all the fields that are used, labels that are used in the application from the that is coming from the pages and data model. It is showing it, and it also gives a flexibility where the developer can, I mean, the consultant or they see that this language translation is not good enough, what Google is providing. Then if they want to update some of them, then they can refine the translations further, and the generator application will use those translations. So if you look at this is the generator application, and in the generator application we will be able to see the application in different languages. So that is on the translation. So till this part it was done by the consultant, okay, and then the consultant will be able to show the prototype, generate the prototype, and show the prototype to the key users. Key users, once they have the visual application in front of their eyes, they'll be able to give the feedback much easily, saying, okay, I need these features differently, or I need extra these features, etc. So the requirements get much more clarified and fine-tuned at a very early stage rather than at a very end stage, and it reduces the risk of delivering a non-compliant application, so that it increases also the success rate of the applications. That's an idea. So for example, if the application, this is a prototyping application, so you can see that application is generated in English and also other languages. For example, if you go to Chinese, then you can have those Chinese text. If you already translated to Dutch, then you can see the Dutch translation, so you can see it like that. So till now it was done, the prototyping and the prototyping up to the prototyping, designing, etc. was done by the consultant, and now the application can be enhanced further to complete all the requirements by the technical team. So the technical team, of course, will do the design and then the code generation. So in technical design, they can determine whether they want to run the application on GCP or where they want to App Engine first generation or second generation, or a Docker image which has to run on Cloud Run, etc. So like that, they will be able to select where it has to be, the target engines where it has to run, what is the backend language, what is the front end language, what is the transaction database, which is a transaction database to use or analytical database to use. Everything they configure. So it's not like Rappit is saying you have to use only this. Based on your corporate strategy and your application needs, you can choose which of those technologies are right fit. For example, it can be Firestore, or you can go to Cloud SQL or MySQL or Hibernate, RDBMS system, etc. You will be able to select it. Similarly, for analytical database, it could be BigQuery or Cloud SQL. So we can determine which ones have to be done. Sending mails, you want to use Send Mails or MailJet or Mailgun, so you can select your mail as a mail provider. So similarly, you can configure all the different environments needed for this application: dev, test, and pre-prod. In this case, production also. So you can specify your infrastructure needs, and when you go to services, system would have automatically generated all the services based on your data model, pages, actions, etc. It generates a list of all the services that are needed by the application. So the developer can use this and add more services, custom services. If they want, they can add other services also. Then you have the API integration, like what we discussed. This application has to be integrated with SAP systems. So there's a SAP, and how do you connect to SAP? What are the environment URLs for each of the environments you can configure? What is the authentication type, basic or OAuth or access key or no authorization? You can configure that, and based on each of those authorizations, like authentication mechanisms, then the particular uh, details are shown, and then you can fill what is needed. So, and this is for the general connecting to SAP. And for SAP, we have two APIs. One is to get the work orders and to update the work orders back. So get work orders will use this URL. For example, on top of the base URL of the SAP system for that environment, this will be the URL that we use, and it has no request, but response is a JSON. So you can look at the documentation of the SAP system for this API and put the actual JSON that we are receiving. So, and then when you say generate schema, system will automatically generate a schema for this sample JSON that is there. Usually it will be available in the documentation. You look at it and then update it. Similarly, for update order, you can also say whether it's a get method or post method, etc., delete, etc. You can specify that, and you can see what is a request object, request JSON or response JSON. You can configure that. So that way, the system automatically generates a code. Like for example, in this case, it will generate code for sap.workorders.getWorkorders or sap.workorders.updateWorkorders, and the developer will be able to very easily just use those APIs that are generated, which include all the authentication mechanism, etc. is automatically handled already by Rappit, and gives a real jump start for doing the API integration just by using like a Java method rather than looking at all the complexities of how the API has to connect. So once all the design is done, then the developer will be able to generate the code. So once the code is generated, it is also checked in into GitLab. So you can consider Rappit like a very efficient and fast developer in your team. So based on your designs, Rappit generates the code very quickly, and then just like other developers in the team, the generated code will be pushed from Rappit to your GitLab. So you can push it. Similarly, and once it is pushed, the other developers will be able to pull it and then make further customizations on top of it. More they can add their own code that is required either in the front end or back end or other places, and then they can also push it into Git. So again, if you want to pull it from Git and show prototyping here, you can still do that. So that is an option. So this is the very quick demo of the application, and the generated code, if you see, is in your gets synchronized to your GitLab. So if you look at GitLab, for example, for the work order management, if you go to the development branch, then you have the code that is generated. So in development branch, for example, work order management, then you have the front end code and also the back end code. So if we look at go to front end code, then you have the source very aptly structured, like normally what is required. You have the app, and then you have the, for example, work order, and work order, you have work order list and work order detail. If you go to list, you have the TypeScript and the CSS files. So TypeScript files, then system has generated all this code. So similarly, for every for example, for backend code, this is the front end code, and similarly for backend, the backend, if you look at the backend base, it would have generated the code for the backend base. The base exceptions and everything is handled here. Similarly, the backend work order, backend app, you have the source work order management app, the web services, listeners, everything is also generated. So that's a very quick cap up of the demo of this application. So I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, we can ask at the end of the demo. So let's go into the technical deep dive of this application of Rappit itself. So in the technical deep dive, okay, basically the applications that are generated using Rappit are following a cloud native architecture. So those are like a microservices architecture. They are run on lightweight containers, like either App Engine or Cloud Run or etc. Lightweight containers. They provide REST APIs for integrations by default. They are stateless, and they can run on fully managed databases. It's a choice, of course. By default, Rapid has a choice for going for fully managed databases. Like in case if it's a NoSQL, then it is Firestore, or if it is a SQL, then it is like my Cloud SQL in GCP. But in case you want to have your database hosted and then connect to that, that's also possible. So but there's a preference for going to fully managed databases because of heavy performance and easy management and lower cost of administrative overheads, etc. And DevOps managed CI/CD system automatically generates a CI/CD scripts also, and automated because automated CI/CD scripts are created. Automatic infrastructure as a code scripts in Terraform are created. Automated test code test scripts are also created. So there are a lot of automation that happens. The accelerating application development, there is a rich functionality out of box provided by Rapid. Like for example, you have the requirements designer where you gather all the requirements. You can have the full flexibility to write the code that you want to write. It is not restricting you to say, okay, you can only do what is already provided in Rapid, but otherwise you cannot write code. No, it gives you the full flexibility to write any kind of code that you want on top of the generation that was done in Rapid already. You can integrate APIs. You can run across different devices. So there are a lot of different features that are possible. And this is optimized for Google Cloud, but you can also run it on AWS or on-premise or Azure. For example, in Google Cloud, you can run it on App Engine. You can use Firestore for your transactions, which is a NoSQL database. For analytical database, you can use BigQuery. You can run your application on App Engine or Cloud Run, where the application becomes Dockerized and you can run it there, so etc. Lean code. Rapid is not another low code, no code tool. There's a fundamental difference. It is a lean code tool. So in low code tools, the idea is also to minimize the development capacity, the developer knowledge, etc. But here in lean code, it is opposite. It is not trying to reduce the development knowledge that is required, but it's basically empowering the development team. The development team comprising of consultants and developers. It empowers them to do more in that time. So that is the power of Rapid. That is the idea of Rapid also. It generates code and gives the full flexibility for developers to write their own code. But the basic things like CRUD and all those things, it does it automatically so that the human mind, the developer mind, can be used for writing more complex tasks and not the regular things. It reduces amount of code the developers have to write by doing a lot of generation, which is gives a jump start to the developers. Complete flexibility for developers to write any kind of code on the back end or front end to be able to achieve any kind of functionality that is needed in the application. And the generated code is also secure. For example, it is following OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities addressed, penetration tests, as Sonar Cube scan, etc. And it is optimized for performance and hosting charges. The code is not only generated for the application, which is the front end and back end, it also generates CI/CD scripts, it also generates automated test scripts and infrastructure as a code like a Terraform scripts. And all the scripts and all the code that is generated are underlying using very popular technologies, best in class technologies, and there is nothing proprietary in what is being generated. Like it uses popular open source, feature rich and robust and well documented open source libraries, like for example PrimeNG for all the components, Angular, Bootstrap, HTML, Java, so Spring as a framework. So for you to bring in new developers and start working, it is much more easy because there is no proprietary technology. It is just like another developer in your team, a very efficient developer having written a lot of code for you, and on top of it, other developers are writing additional code to enhance and make sure that the application has all the features that are required. So that's the idea. So it is easy for developers to understand this code that is generated because it is just like a regular code that they would have done also on hand, and they can continuously use it, enhance it, maintain it, etc. in a simple way. The customer is fully in control of everything, of the source, of the data, of the infrastructure. This is to make sure that we avoid any kind of vendor lock-in. either to Vandenberg or to any other particular technology or systems. So in this case, the generated application is running in the customer's own infrastructure, for example, in their own GCP or AWS or on premise. What we saw, the generated code gets automatically checked into GitLab from the very start. So the customer is in control of the source code always, and with or without Rappit, they will be able to extend that further, extend their applications, extend the code, extend the features, and maintain it for any number of years further. The data, since application is running within the organization's infrastructure, the data is fully within the organization and fully owned by the organization. So it makes sure that it is very safe, follows the same principles of data security that has been applied at a corporate level, etc. This gives a true vendor no lock-in, because the source code, the application infrastructure, the data security, everything is as per what is already defined for the customer as a corporate strategy. EVA does not say that you have to only use, for example, Cloud Firestore. You can use for a transaction database, you can use a Firestore or an RDBMS. So it always, like for example, when you are trying to send mails, it doesn't impose that you have to use only MailJet or SendGrid. It gives you options. You can use whatever is your standard organization's policy. You can use the same technologies and then same components, same tools, and then use them to send mails, or to any other things also for login authentication. For example, you can use login, use the Google login, or your own SSO, like Okta is your SSO, then you can connect to that. So everything is a pluggable technology in Rappit. In especially in databases, there is a clear distinction between transaction database and analytical database. Transaction database is where all the transactions on a happening on a minute by minute or second by second basis gets stored, and then that gets synchronized automatically to an analytical database. That is where, like, example is Google BigQuery's analytical database, where it can be, the analytical database can be used for like dashboarding, business intelligence, BI, machine learning, etc. Then you don't go into the transaction database and lower the performance of the application. So transaction database is serving the application for the application users. Analytical database is getting real-time synced from the transaction database, and it is serving for all the intelligence, BI or dashboarding or other ML or other things, machine learning or other things that you want to do. Similarly, search, there is a support for Google search or Elasticsearch. Cache, multiple caches are supported. So similarly, it's a plugin technology. The developer can choose based on their own requirements, based on their own application, which is the right choice. They can choose that technology to generate the code in. We discussed that Rappit, you can generate the source code, and developer can add more code to that, can extend it, but it can also be regenerated. Again, you can change the design, you can add a new field, you can add a new table and regenerate, and still the code that was written is respected. It's not like it gets mixed up on once you regenerate, every code is lost. It's not the case. So that is maintained. How it is maintained is by following the simple concepts of OOPS, and structuring it in a very clear way, that the generated code is in one folder, okay, and then the custom logic is like you extend your classes, whether it is a front end or back end, you extend your classes and write your custom logic in that, or you have different events provided by Rappit and you code on those events. So these custom extended logic or code folder or source code will never get touched during the regeneration. So regeneration only keeps applying in this area, and then this can get regenerated. That is not where the developers are doing code change. The developers are always doing code change at the custom layers, which is an extension of the basic base classes of using the Java and other regular OOPS concepts themselves. So that way it is always respected. Yeah, back to you, Hybert.
Yeah, thank you, Vinod, for this enlightening demonstration. So I will talk more about how to get involved, and of course also afterwards we have still the Q&A. So basically, I think Vinod already referred to it. We show with the use case for the consultants or the business analysts on one hand, and the developers on the other hand. So we see that consultants or business analysts are empowered to use Rappit for requirements gathering or prototyping. And on this side, we have developers, be that large enterprises or ISVs or system integrators, who are basically allowed to much more smartly and quickly build advanced applications on Google Cloud with Java, with Rappit. So it can be used in-house and by those personas, or as well as a full source offering for Vaandenburg, where if you would have a specific need, of course, we can also help you build that application rapidly using the tool as well as our own developers. So it's really ideally suited for consultants that have multiple applications to develop those together with users, or as well as large development teams that are built by Java applications, typically part of a medium-sized or enterprise organization. Where I'd like to remark that Rappit is not a self-subscription tool, as it's really something that we would like to provide in a guided manner, and that you work with the Vaandenburg team to get a training, to make it available for you, and then take it from there. So I think that I would like to share if you can quickly talk to the user rules that we have available in Rappit, and then afterwards I will make some concluding remarks slides before we go into the Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Yes, Hybert. So there are 4 main types of roles who are using Rappit, or using Rappit itself is not the generated application but Rappit. So there is one is a prototype viewer. Prototype viewers are users who basically the key users who are looking at the generated application, not making any designs, but they are just looking at the generated application and then giving feedback. So there is no license fee for that. The consultant will be able to generate the prototype of the application and share that access to the prototype, and the key users can look at the prototype and share feedback on further refinements to the requirements. Then you have the design viewers. Basically, they are just viewers of the design itself of the application. They can view all the Rappit Studio. They can look at all the prototype application. They can see the designs, but they cannot make any editing or changes to that. Then there are the consultants. The consultants who are the users who can use the Rappit Studio for gathering the requirements, doing the diagrams, the documentation, documents, requirements, etc., and can do the designs of the data model, workflow, the pages, etc., and then generate the prototyping. So those are the consultants. And then we have the developers who can basically do all the things that like a consultant can do, and also further also do the designing of the application and then generating the code. So that is what the developers can do. Basically, they have the full access to do everything that is provided in Rappit. So those are the 4 different types of roles in the Rappit tool.
Yeah, thank you, Vinod. And of course, if there are questions, please raise them in the chat, then we can take them later in the Q&A. So pricing principles. So I think we've outlined a couple of principles that we'd like to adhere to with the Rappit tool. I think transparency, you will see that the pricing model that is basically built on the different roles that Vinod has just been sharing, as well as the type of application. And I think it's very important to note here that Rappit does not have any runtime limitations. So for the box to the right, there are no scaling penalties, whether you build an application for 10 users, 100,000 users, 10,000 users, 100,000 users. We don't care. As there are no scaling penalties. There are no license fees related to the number of end users for your application. I think what we do like to highlight that we'll be looking for yearly commitment, so that the entry level is 5 developer or 5 user licenses, and that fee will be made up of a monthly subscription fee consisting of a general platform license fee as well as a fee for each role. Of course, there's no vendor lock-in, so I think Vinod has already talked to that. So the source code can be exported. You're free to, after 1 year, further maintain it yourself, and that's up to you. Additional services will be provided by Vaandenburg on a paid basis. For example, they include the training to set you up with Rappit. But also, if there are other additional needs, we're happy to provide those to you. And as Vinod mentioned, pricing will also be differentiated compared to if it's a Vaandenburg hosted environment or an environment that will be hosted here on the environment. So if you would like to use Rappit, please do contact regional sales for an intake call. So Marcel, Ronald, JB, and myself, our contact details are listed here. We will set up an exploratory call with you to explore the joint fit, and then also invite you to the early bird program, where part of that early bird program is a free trial. Then we'll provide you with the training, and then you're all ready to go. So please do reach out if you are as excited as us with Rappit to know more about it. So then I'll leave it and head into the Q&A. I think we've got some questions already. There's a question from Karsten Vinot. Can you download and make changes to the SSE file? Can you comment to that?
That's right, Hybert. Like what we discussed, any kind of file that is generated from Rappit, it gets pushed into your GitLab. And from the GitLab, the developers will be able to take those code and make their own changes. So CSS, Java, or Angular, or HTML, or any pages they'll be able to change.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Then a question from Wilco, who's asking which API providers are available.
So here, like what we discussed, Rappit provides you an API integration space where you can go there, look at the documentation shared by your different API providers. For example, in case you want to have your SAP APIs used in Rappit, you go to the SAP documentation, register those APIs over here, and start using it. So because typically we see in many places more than just a connector. That is not the idea of Rappit, to have a lot of connectors by default automatically available. But in case you are building an application, those applications have specific APIs built for us. So those SAP APIs or any other ERP APIs or other application APIs, you will be able to register it here and start using it.
Then a question from Rob. He said, what coding languages are available?
At the moment, it is the backend code is using Java, and for front end, it is Angular, Bootstrap, CSS. So later we will also be able to support instead of Angular, for example, React or Vue, etc. But for now, it is Angular in the UI, Bootstrap, CSS, and the backend is Java.
Okay. Yeah. And another question for Rob, I see. He asked, the demo was geared towards the business user UI application. Do you have an example from an integration-only application?
Sorry, can you please repeat the question, Hybert?
The question from Rob is, the demo was geared towards a business user UI application. Do you have an example from an integration-only application?
Yeah, so there are two types of integrations possible. Like, for example, you can bring in the data from your SAP system, store it in the new application that you're building using Rappit, and then further on top of it, do all the functionalities like what we saw now, like workflows, etc. There's another type of integration that's possible, that you just bring in the data from SAP, don't store anything here. For example, it could be SAP or any other system. You bring the data, don't store it here, just make the processing over here and then send it back to the integration details back to the original system. So that's also possible, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then a question from Sean, who's basically asking, is the design then the ultimate limit to what you can do with Rappit?
That's exactly the flexibility provided by Rappit, and that's the power, that it doesn't want to confine what you can do with Rappit only with what is already provided with Rappit. So it gives you a jump start with all the things that are there in Rappit. It gives you a jump start, but it also gives the developers the full flexibility to extend the backend code or the UI code or the integrations or any layer. You can extend and bring in any development to fulfill the needs of the application.
Okay. And then a question from Peter, who asks, is it possible to import the specification of another API in industry available standard like OpenAPI to use this API models in Rappit?
Yeah, how we do that is that you look into the documentation and then you manually look at it. Okay, this is a URL and this is a request object like JSON, and then this is a response JSON, etc. And then you register it. So that's how you typically do it at the moment in Rappit for the API integration.
Okay. I'm just checking if there are only Q&A questions in the chat. No, I don't think so. I think we got two questions, Vinod, prior to the webinar. So then I propose that we take those, and then I think it's almost time to wrap up. So two last questions. If there are only questions in the chat, please do let us know. I think there was a question, what materials available? And what are the rapid deployment scenarios? So I will take the first question, Vinod, if you can take the last question.
Yeah.
So what materials available? You'll see that the website will continue to be expanded with new material. So for the brochures is there, as well as the demo videos. So stay tuned because a lot more is coming in the coming months. So yeah, excited to share more about it in the coming weeks and the months ahead. Vinod, then for you to the other question.
Yeah.
Rapid deployment scenarios.
Yeah. For rapid deployment scenarios for enterprises, there are two options. The first option is where Rappit itself is hosted by Vandenberg, and then the different customers who want it, they are taking basically a tenant in Rappit, which is hosted by Vandenberg, and then inside their own tenant, they are creating their applications. So once they create their applications, designing in Rappit and generating the code, then they push it and deploy those applications in their own environments, like for example in their own GCP environment, not in Vandenberg's GCP environment. So the application development happens inside Vandenberg's Rappit environment, but the deployed application is in their customer's own GCP environment. So this is the first scenario. In the second scenario is that, if you can please go to the next slide, Hybert, where there will be some enterprise customers who say that, okay, we want to host Rappit also internally. So in that cases, Rappit is also given as given as a tool which can be run inside the customer's GCP environment itself, and then Rappit is running inside their environment specifically only for that particular tenant, for that customer. So then the customer uses Rappit for building their different applications and deploy those applications again inside their own GCP or other clouds. So these are the two different options. One is Rappit is hosted by Vandenberg and running applications are on the customer's environment. The second option is that hosting of Rappit itself is done by the customers in the customer's environment, and running applications are also on the customer environment. So typically, if you look at it in both options, the running application is in the customer's environment. The difference is in where the Rappit is running for the designer. So whether it is running from a Vandenberg environment or in the customer's own environment.
Okay, thanks a lot. I don't see any questions, so then concludes our conversation for today. So yeah, we have high expectations and I think a lot of excitement for Rappit. So I look forward to engaging with you, and thank you, Vinod, for your contribution. Wish you all a good day.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye-bye.